It's wonderful to be here today. I'm American, based in Singapore. I'm a director and senior counsel at Maxion, and we're also a signatory to the Global Compact. I actually was the lawyer for the Global Compact for many years and the head of legal and policy there. I'm from Maxion. We've got our whole sales teams here. This presentation is designed to be very educational and not just trying to talk about Maxion in particular. But I'll talk about the challenges that are facing the solar industry in the supply chain, and then also touch briefly on recycling. So let's first talk about the supply chains being under scrutiny. So I've gathered a bunch of different headlines here. You've probably all seen them around the world that there's a lot of allegations about issues in Western China. The treatment of the Uyghurs is top of mind in many places. Also, there's issues in Malaysia with the supply chain there, where a lot of the solar manufacturing has been rerouted. And definitely that's touched Australia as well. So we've got a Australian company there. In terms of the legal framework around the world, the United States has been very much at the forefront of passing laws to try to prevent any forced labor in solar supply chains. So back in 2021, they started passing what's called withhold release orders, or WROs. And this is saying that products made with polysilicon from certain companies are not allowed into the United States. This company called Hoshine, which from the Xinjiang region of China, has something like 30% of the global market share in polysilicon. And the United States started saying, we won't let that be imported into the United States. The United States is a huge market for us. And so as the head of legal, I had to pay a lot of attention to figuring out, okay, how can we prove that we don't have any Xinjiang in our supply chain, any Hoshine? Then last year we had the UFLPA, which is the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act, that went into effect. So that gives a presumption that anything coming from the Xinjiang region of China is produced with forced labor. So we did a lot of work to make sure that we don't have anything in our supply chain from Xinjiang. Right now, to date, I follow this very closely. I'm sure probably a lot of people in the room do, because many of the companies downstairs have actually been prevented from entering the US. So there's about half a dozen companies that have had their solar products prevented from entering the US. A lot of that wound up getting rerouted to places like Europe and frankly to Australia as well. So we're a global company. We sell in 100 markets. I'm very active in terms of promoting policy reforms, both in the EU and also in Australia. So I sit on the Human Rights Committee of the ESMC, which is the European Solar Manufacturing Commission. And then I also sit on the Modern Slavery Working Group at the CEC here in Australia that's sponsoring this conference. So what happened in Europe was that all the solar companies actually kind of had different opinions about what was going on, but the lawmakers really didn't want to be a dumping ground. So there was a lot of press about how Europe is getting all these solar panels that can't get admitted into the US. So we actually worked on a position paper to try to strengthen the legislation, both because it's the right thing to do, because we place human rights as one of the most important values for our company, but also, frankly, because it's a competitive advantage, because we are so careful to make sure we don't have any human rights violations. So Europe, what happened, this just happened a couple of weeks ago. So this is developing very, very fast. But there's the trade working group just passed a draft law on forced labor. It's going to be really, really strict, is what they're looking at. And what's really interesting there is that they have this concept that anything that's already been installed in Europe that's found to have forced labor in it should be recycled and taken actually out of the market. That's still, anyone who knows anything about the EU knows it's quite cumbersome, the way that laws go into effect there. But this is something that's happening in Europe. So I sit here in Australia, as I say, on the working group here. We've got Professor Cocaine, who's helping us put recommendations in. Again, what we're trying to do is make these as strict as possible because it's the right thing to do for Australia. So I've got a couple of case studies for you, which I think people always like when we present, because it's a bit fun, hands-on. So this is Malaysia. So we have a factory in Malaysia where I think a lot of the supply in Australia would be routed through. Malaysia has an issue. They've got jobs, these are 3D jobs, they call them. They're dirty, dangerous, and difficult. And At least what they say in Malaysia is that no Malaysians want to do them. A friend here pointed out I'm from the US. We have the same concept there, that we have all these jobs that people don't want to do, which is why we have people coming in from Mexico to do certain types of work, is what they claim. So same concept in Malaysia. They take workers from Indonesia, from Bangladesh, from Nepal, and bring them in. They take their passports away. They charge them recruitment fees, and essentially they're kind of in debt bondage because they can't go anywhere without a passport, and they're perpetually in debt. So one of the things that we do as a best practice is we go give in-person code of conduct trainings. I find that very helpful to actually go look people in the eye, say, listen, I'm here, you could come talk to me, rather than having it be just like a code of conduct training on your computer. We also actually do trainings for our suppliers to make sure that they adhere to our values. So what happened was I went, probably about 7 years ago, I went and gave a training in Malaysia, and people came up to me afterwards and said, oh, Maxine says it doesn't believe in labor rights violations, and that's in the code of conduct, but they take the passports of these workers. So we went and did a whole investigation and found that there was that practice happening with some of our suppliers. We went and did sort of a 360 investigation. So you can see that's actually me in the dormitory with some migrant workers from Indonesia, actually going to see where they live. And we put some lockers in there so they would have access to the passports. We're very transparent, so we actually published this in our modern slavery statement last year about the case study about what was happening in Malaysia. So this is one practice that's happening that maybe is not getting as much public interest and scrutiny, but I think it's certainly one to be aware of. Now here's the slide that I think probably at least most of our customers are most interested in, which is how is it that Maxine is able to import into the US when all these other companies are getting prevented from doing it? So we've been very proactive. I've actually gone and met with customs twice to explain our whole supply chain. The last time was a couple of months ago. Spent 3.5 hours in a room getting grilled on every aspect of it. Then they go all kinds of different directions. Okay, what do you have in your contracts? What do you do for your supplier trainings? Can you show attendance records of supplier trainings? I walked them through that, and we did the whole deep dive of everything there. So I'll show you how the cookie is made. On this slide, what you see is all of the details that we have to show to U.S. Customs in order to show that we don't have any Xinjiang content in our polysilicon. So on the left, you see that's kind of a system that we have set up for a report generator for traceability. On the upper right-hand corner is a technological solution that we have. So what we adopted was a technological solution that was actually developed initially for quality purposes. For quality purposes, you want to be able to know if there's a defect on someone's roof. You want to be able to know what factory line it came off of so you can go isolate where that defect's coming from. So what we did was we harnessed that technology in order to be able to show the provenance of where the polysilicon is coming from. So that's that line there. It's basically, it just looks like a bunch of records, but all these numbers are actually tracking to what lot number goes here, here, here. Then at the bottom right-hand corner, you see all of the different documentation. This is documentation that shows what boat it came off of, where's the purchase order for the polysilicon, where's the certification about the polysilicon, where it comes from. So we have all that documentation embedded in there. And so U.S. Customs actually stops at your factory. Okay, this module, can you trace it all back for you? And so we're able to do that, isolate it, what ship it came off, what day, the whole way through. Yeah, that's been quite a process, but we put a lot of work into it, and we're very proud of how robust that process is. Now, in terms of having a robust compliance program, I won't spend too much time on this slide, but it's very document intensive and process intensive, which I spent several hours going through with customs about putting the right clauses in your contract, doing the right screening of all of your suppliers, making sure that you've done third-party, maybe negative news searches if you need to, making sure they're not on the wrong lists, and then having a grievance mechanism, which is how I originally found out about the Malaysia thing, having kind of an open door that anybody can raise issues. Any of our customers, anyone can raise issues on our website. And then we do reporting. In the US, we have to do conflict minerals reporting. Australia, we don't have to do modern slavery reporting, but we do it voluntarily just because it's the right thing to do. And then there's auditing. So the way this works is we actually map our whole supply chain. We have it in our modern slavery statement. You can see where all of our suppliers come from, and we have more details about that, but that's kind of a high level of where the risks are, how many suppliers we have, and we've done the homework to make sure that none of them are in Xinjiang or have sub-suppliers in Xinjiang province. Then we look at the traceability, and here I can actually say a point about the actual panel discussion about Australian manufacturing. So what I would say about the solar supply chain is that the polysilicon, a large percentage of it comes from China, but not all. So we source for our SunPower Maxion panels all from outside China, from Germany, from Michigan in the US, from Malaysia. We actually do have raw materials in our supply chain coming from Australia. So we actually have an Australian element, but it's actually amazing what happens to it because the raw materials will come from Australia. They'll go to Germany to become polysilicon. Then they'll go to China to do ingot wafering, these steps. And then the module manufacturing might happen in Malaysia or Philippines, and then it comes back to Australia. So it's amazingly cumbersome. But it seems to me, and I was at a Clean Energy Association CSC event last year, the easiest one to bring to Australia would be the polysilicon because you have all the raw materials here. The ingoting and wafering right now is about 97% of that's in China. It'd be great to develop it elsewhere, but that's, I think, a bit of a harder challenge. It's a very dirty industry. But the polysilicon, which is where all the allegations of forced labor come from, that one I think Australia could do. And I think Maxion would certainly be a customer of that if we get that supply chain into effect. So this is kind of, I've walked you through some of the specific details with U.S. Customs. That's the whole traceability angle, and that's what people are looking for when they're talking about forced labor, is where is that polysilicon coming from? Now, another step that I think is incredibly important that I did want to mention is the auditing process, and specifically to make it very clear that there are definitely challenges to doing auditing in China. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of patience, but we're very proud that we've been able to conduct audits in China. We continue to do audits in China. These audits both do the social side, to look at the workers' hours, to make sure that they're not underage, to look at all the conditions in the factories. They also stress test the traceability. So they actually go in and you do have to be careful how you do an audit in China, but if you make it a quality audit, we're just looking at the quality here. As I explained, what we do is we harness the quality technology for the human rights purposes. Then you're able to do these audits in China. So definitely, if anybody says that you're not allowed, you can't look at the supply chain in China, you can't do audits in China, that's not our experience. It could be willful blindness. I can't speak for other companies, but it's definitely something that's possible. One of the best practices for that is something called the Setex Platform. So the Setex Platform is a platform. It's actually based out of the UK. It has a social method called the meta auditing methodology, a very standardized methodology. Many auditing companies do it, and then you can upload your audit actually on the platform, and all of your customers can go look at that detailed audit. So we're able to carry out those audits at factories in China, and we can show them to our customers and make them available to anybody that wants to see them. The way that these processes go forward is a pre-audit process with questionnaire, then you have an audit, then you do a post-audit follow-up. It's super detailed, and actually they always are going to find things. Them finding things is actually a good thing. Definitely nobody's perfect, no factory's perfect. We're certainly not perfect, but it's actually, some of our customers, when they do audits with us, they find it, comforting, but we find little thing here, little thing there, you get better. And the fact that you're in that process of trying to get better is, what you look for in a supplier. So I've got just a quick checklist about what you want to look for. So with a supplier, do they share the right values? Do they have the right policies? All that documentation I was showing you want to go through and make sure that you have all that in place. The risk-based approach, I mentioned you have to be kind of pragmatic because we have a lot of, if it's a law firm in Australia, we're not that worried about the forced labor, but if it's somebody in Malaysia or China, we'll be more worried about it. Look at where the products are sourced from. I think because of the legal scrutiny and attention and the fact that when I said you can carry audits in China, Xinjiang is one place you can't carry out audits. Everywhere else you can. So if they're sourcing anything from Xinjiang, it's probably a little bit, I don't want to do that. And do they have these third-party audits, which you can do in the rest of China? I guess we'll have questions later. So that's about the human rights in the supply chain. Now I just wanted to say a few words about circular economy and the circular economy approach. When people ask us about end of life, we say we don't believe in end of life. We believe in more of like a cradle-to-cradle approach. Definitely having a very long-lasting product. So we've got a 40-year warranty on our flagship product. But in terms of material sourcing, going through the scope 1, scope 3, scope 2, scope 3, disclosing all of that. In terms of the production, I know it's an American certification. I know American lead certifications, what we look to in the US. I know they have different standards elsewhere, but it's a standard for having a very sustainable facility. Lean manufacturing, using the highest efficiency product. And then at the end of life, we're definitely meeting with recyclers here to try to up our game in terms of what we can do. The first thing is having a product that lasts 40 years, so it doesn't get recycled as soon. Another thing we have is this declare label. So we actually say exactly what's there. We're lead-free, no toxic in our products. And then we're also, we work very actively in our communities. And so we have a partnership with NTU in Singapore, where we're headquartered, trying to experiment, to come up with better ways for solar manufacturing. Including actually one of the things we're looking at is figuring out if we can mine it for polysilicon to get it. So, mining from something that's already there, reused panel, rather than actually having to mine from somewhere in the ground. So this is my very last slide. So in terms of the whole circular economy approach, we found one measurement that I think is interesting for us to be this concept of energy payback time. Energy payback time is looking at the amount of energy that goes into producing your solar panel versus the amount of energy that goes out. We did a study with a organization called Fraunhofer in Germany, a leader in the solar industry. And you do a whole calculation about how much carbon is produced in the supply, and then you do this calculation. I won't go through it, but it actually makes sense if you go through those symbols, and then you get a figure like that. So actually our panels, it's like 150 times carbon positive. Which is one, I think, kind of handy way to look at the whole concept of the solar industry and how much you're getting out of it, which feeds into what my friend was saying about having a longer lasting product, higher quality product. So yeah, really happy to be here, and I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.